Call the regular council meeting of Monday, June the 15th to order. I don't believe there's any late items, so there's an agenda in front of you. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Councilor Randawa and Councilor Forrester. Are there any additions or deletions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have two presentations this evening, and the first is from the acting officer in charge of the RCMP, Sergeant Mark Jones. Sergeant, come on forward, put yourself there right at the microphone. You talk over the broken pipe to the Prince Rupert City Council, and welcome.
Does it hold down?
Yep.
Sorry. As
There
you
you
tell,
go.
I'm too old.
Yeah. You don't have to hold it. It'll stay on.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak. So most of you might have had an opportunity to meet me, but for those that you haven't, I took over the detachment here on October 1st, and as such, doing a lot of rebuilding with the detachment, doing a lot of different things, and I think so far we've been moving forward in a very positive manner, and I'm pretty happy about that. One of my things I like to do with my leadership role is to put out what I call a monthly report. And these are generally statistics that occur from, so you know what's going on in your policing area. The ones that I've just have created, I started in January because I was obviously doing some other things and trying to make sure that we could build these up properly. And what they'll explain is I've broken it down for all the areas that we police in this area. So obviously there's not just Prince Rupert, we have Port Edward, we have Lax, we have Clem2, we have Kitkatla, Metlakatla, a number of different communities. So I've broken it down so every community has an opportunity to see what's going on in their communities from a policing perspective. So generally what I like when I do these things, when I present them in mayor and council, is it's not to go through every single stat. It's the stats that I think that are going to be important. So my job as the man in charge here is to make sure that I'm mitigating as much risk as possible so that it doesn't fall back on us and in turn the municipalities as well. So you'll see that when I talk about certain types of files, you'll know that I've got a sort of I'll lean towards them because they are what I would call the higher risk files. So in just a quick look, and you'll see that the way I've done this is I'll tell you what the current month, the number of files that we have for that particular topic, the year to date, like so how many right now. So as of today, well, this would be the end of May. That's how many of those type of files we have, and then I compare it to the last year's month, and then you also know what the last year's total were. So it's not a very complicated system, but it just shows, gives you some ideas. So as it looks, as we're moving along, we seem to be on a weird trend, which is nice. We seem to be lowering our violent offenses of assaults. And unfortunately, within Prince Rupert, we do have a high level of domestic assaults. So that is always going to be a concern for us. So those are probably the major component of our assault files. Sexual offenses, those are something that are very concerning, obviously, for all of us because they require a lot of time, they require a lot of energy, and they're very traumatic for the people that we're dealing with. So as it sits right now, we are sort of just a little bit below what I would say would be what last year's average was, which is a good thing, but that could change in any minute. Another one we look at is child pornography and child exploitation, because those are also a big topic. And I don't think that when I was originally talking to different council members and such, I don't think the community actually really understands that we actually have a very high ratio of child pornography files in Prince Rupert. And that in itself is not a good thing. And just so you know, they're very, very complicated files. They require a lot of police hours to investigate because there's a lot of number of warrants that are required for these, as well as it's extremely expensive because when we get the electronic devices, we have to send them in to be downloaded by a professional, and that does not come cheap. So those type of files I would love to see never happen again, but unfortunately they're at a very high ratio here. So that's always going to be a concern and something I'll always be monitoring. For the most part, you'll see a lot of different property type of crime or property offenses and offenses that occur with, we call them like nuisances, like causing a disturbance, the liquor acts and those type of things. So probably more so what I want to refer to in that when I get into those is it was been brought to my attention when I first got here that that Five Corners area is an area. There's some other areas as well. We know that beside the municipal hall here is an area, and down at Mariners Park, sorry, There's Park is another area. We've focused on those three areas, and we've increased our enforcement. And so I can tell you, as you look at the numbers, they have been focusing on the open alcohol that's been going on there. And there's been, I think, what was it, last year or last month? I just want to make sure I get the proper stat. I think it was 133 contacts where they dumped liquor from the people that were there. And for this month, 147. And I took a look at this month, or sorry, the May, my apologies. And for June, I just look at we're halfway through June, and we're pretty much almost in that same sort of level. We're going to be over 100 and some more liquor dumps. So those are the things we're focusing, targeting that to try to see if we can mitigate it, because we all know that it's affecting not only the people who live around there, because we've heard a number of complaints and different things about stuff that's going on for the homes that are there as well. We have businesses that are around there. The businesses have been quite upset about it. So that's something we've needed to step up, and that's what the members have been doing. And I'm pretty happy with the results that we've been getting. Going along as well, other things we focus on is also going to be our impaired driving and our, they call them like immediate roadside prohibitions. These are things that we have through the province that we can take people's licenses away if they blow over a certain legal limit. So I noticed that, I'll be honest with you, that the statistics that we've had from previous year are very poor. So we have been I've been getting the members trained, and we've been encouraging them, and we've been using overtime opportunities, and you'll start to see different road checks as well occur for that. So that's been I am already starting to see the results of positive from that, and hopefully we should see some better enforcement and check stops. It was ironic because we actually had one of the members say to me, we did this twice in a row, and he says, in the second night, he says, we had one person, that was it. And I said, well, that's good. Then it shows that we're doing our job. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to get somebody all the time. If we're not getting anybody, maybe it's also a positive that people are starting to take the hint and not to come out. One of the other things I'll mention as well is our mental health. Mental health is always going to be a huge component, and it's always a dangerous component. It's always a risk component is what I call when we're policing. And our mental health, it's a tough one. We've got a high number of what we call Mental Health Act apprehensions, people that get taken up to the hospital. And I've brought it up, and you'll see in the bottom of this one, I talk about total hours at the hospital. These are problems that we need to kind of hopefully figure out sooner than later. If you look at like the year 2025, our members spent over 308, almost 309 hours up at the hospital. You equate that into money for what you're paying for a police officer, that's a considerable amount of money. And that's also the police officer being away from answering calls. Like I said, we talk about high domestic violence. We talk about all the different other things that are occurring within the community. So those are concerning numbers. And I've kept them updated for every month. And just like I said, on the last one, it's dipped a bit, which is kind of nice. So that may be attributed to maybe there's more doctors within the community and such. So maybe that's helping us out. But just to let you know, like for instance, in May, we did 12 Mental Health Act apprehensions, and in total our members spent 15 and a half hours up at the hospital. So that's something that's always concerned, because we don't want to tie our members up for those type of things when it's a medical situation, like a mental health situation, not a policing situation. We're not there to charge them, we're there to get them the help they need. So, and that's what it comes down to. Things I'll always be cognizant of as well, and you'll hear me talk about, you'll always see like our victim services is really important, and I'm really pushing that. We have a great victim services program here, and thanks to the municipality, we've managed to provide a second position for victim services, which is helping out, and I know our members are really keeping up to making referrals so people can utilize the system. And we have a very, very good victim services here. They're very, very how do I say it? They're very versatile. We use them for a lot of different things, and they've come in handy and helped us out a lot. And lastly, as I've always will talk about, is our prisoners. And our prisoners are always going to be a concern, because the more prisoners we keep, the higher the risk it is for whatever can happen when the prisoner's in cells. So at this point, it's going to be a tough one. We seem to be on track to maybe being a little higher than our last year's prisoner count, but we'll see what turns out with the different events, with different summers and stuff like that. But overall, those are the type of things I'll be keeping an eye on to make sure that we don't have large blips or large out of control situations. So in general, that's what I was, that's generally what these reports will break down. Something to keep in mind, like when we've spoken about, we have what's called our annual performance plan, which we look at policing priorities for the community. And for this community, we looked at traffic initiatives of impaired driving enforcement and crime reduction, which is that those zones that we call like the Five Corners, the Mariners Park, and the fountain, sorry, just on the side of the municipal hall here. So these are things we're going to keep track of and keep monitoring and going through there. For the most part, that's just a quick sort of rundown. I'm always open for questions. I know maybe a lot of times people have different thoughts, concerns. Anybody want to throw something at me, I can try to help. And I'll just caveat with this. If it's about a police investigation, I cannot divulge. I'll just come down to I'm sorry, it's just a police investigation at this point in time, obviously. But if there's general questions, by all means.
Perfect. Councillor Cunningham.
One thing that is just a general is e-scooters.
Yes.
I see a lot of kids without helmets and that. And recently there's been a rash of ER visits in the lower mainland and things like that. And we do have a bylaw for kids wearing helmets and that. I don't want to see the kids getting fined or that, but maybe just pull them over and say, hey, you know, off the street, you should have a helmet.
And one of the interesting things was e-scooters became a bit of a weird topic because in the province of British Columbia, it's controlled by the Motor Vehicle Act. And what ends up happening is that they allowed certain pilot towns, Terrace being one of them, to legalize that to their not being modified is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And I know these ones are modified. So we just had some recent, actually, ironically within the last week, some new updated legislation on it for us so that we know what to do. And I have spoken to the members prior about utilizing that because we did have a couple accidents where people had gone and taken these things and hit a vehicle. And so that will be part of the focus as well when we get out and stuff. It'll hopefully, like I said, generally my approach to stuff is we try an educational approach first, try to see if we can get people to comply. And then if we try to maybe do some warnings, if that doesn't work, then we'll go to the tickets and stuff like that. Like I said, we try to.
Councillor Randawa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks for your presentation. Like very informative, and I can vouch for you. Like on grad night, I see presence out there, and not many vehicles like running around, and that save a lot of lives, I think. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Councillor Adie.
Thanks. Also, this is a kind of a report that I remember pushing for in our first term, and then for whatever reason they've tailed off. I think these are really useful. I do have some specific questions about what's in the stats. Three in particular. One thing that stands out to me is the difference between the drug charges for possession and for trafficking compared to the liquor offenses. No, I appreciate that, the liquor offenses have a visibility that drugs don't quite, they don't come to the same level of visibility, but I'm wondering if those are representative of the real kind of statistical occurrences or whether it's more one is easier to discover and enforce than the other.
Yeah, I would say that for sure there's going to be that element, and I think we've had these discussions before openly, and one of the things I would say is that if you want to compare like Terrace and Prince Rupert, and I always say that, Terrace has a very open drug problem, and it's very visible when you go down there. You can see it in those certain areas. We're very fortunate where I think we don't have that open visibility, and I would be foolish to say that drugs don't occur here, because we do know they do, but I don't believe we see them at the level we see in other cities of this size. I do believe that our biggest issue for substance abuse is alcohol right now. That is the one where you see the most, and you'll see it openly, and unfortunately that seems to be, fortunately and unfortunately, I think we all know that they're all devastating, but we also know how devastating certain drugs can be. And if we start getting those fentanyls, the meths and stuff that showing up into town, then we can have some very serious situations. And I would love not to see that. Is this indicative of saying we don't have a drug problem? Not at all. Drug possession just became decriminalized or recriminalized, sorry, from decriminalization just recently. So now there is different avenues members can do, and you'll start to see where they'll be looking at that. Sorry, and then okay.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, when the decision was taken to decriminalize or to recriminalize many of the narcotics, what did that provoke in terms of your staff planning, staff training, changes in procedures, and so on?
So what it would allow us to do is now obviously we can charge. There used to be for a certain percentage or a certain type of drug or certain weights of drugs we couldn't charge for, and they would just be left with the people. So you can imagine from our perspective, and I had this when I worked in a larger city, you seize under 4 grams, I believe was the term, is what it was. Don't quote me 100%. I'm not fully literate on that exact number, but we'd get them with fentanyl, pure fentanyl, and by law, we had to give it back to them. And that in itself was devastating because you know the potential of what that could do to a person. They could OD. So, so those were, I think with the members now realizing we can now deal with that, doesn't necessarily mean we always have to charge. For smaller amounts, they can seize it and have it destroyed, just take it off the streets, that type of thing. And that's what some of the things they'll end up focusing on. I think more so for us is the trafficking, and I'm starting to see an increase in our trafficking. And I know that our members just this last month had done 2 warrants. I know one for sure for drugs and one that's associated to it. We've been fortunate where the members over the time have seized large amounts just on different investigations, kilo levels and stuff. Doesn't necessarily accept. Doesn't mean that we may be a drug trafficking port as well where people utilize it. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Just carrying on. Under mental health, I'm curious about what are the criteria by which you would determine to deal with something as a mental health issue versus a criminal issue? Is that a fairly prescriptive piece, or is that the intuition of the officers, or does that evolve as the situation evolves on the ground?
Yeah, so there'll always be mental health situations. People may have mental health breakdowns. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily in a crisis where we need to apprehend. So we're governed by the Mental Health Act of British Columbia. And under that, we can apprehend people that are a harm to themselves or a harm to others and have a visible psychological disorder. So a mental health disorder. That gives us the ability, the authority to apprehend them, to take them up to the hospital so the doctor, or it's different places, could be the nurse practitioners, to do an evaluation on the person, to determine if they need to be committed to go into another psychiatric facility or if they can be released at that point in time.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Just a couple more.
Yep.
Just a follow up to that one. It says 31 in the current month, 161 for the year to date. That's the month of May. My assumption is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, my assumption is that the same person is probably responsible for more than one in those statistics. Is there a lot of repetition with people?
We do have a couple people that are constant people that we encounter, but honest from my experience, from what I've seen, is a lot of different people. So you got to remember too that sometimes you work in an industry where you have port workers coming in, you have fishing industry, you have all different. So you bring in a lot of different people from outside the community, and what ends up happening is that they could be bringing those problems with them as well, and then we end up having to deal with them. Yeah.
And the last one, you made a kind of a reference to it in your comparative statements about Terrace versus Prince Rupert, and I've heard that anecdotally from other people in a position to know, but I'm curious about whether when you're looking at these statistics and you're making strategic decisions about how you deploy your resources, does comparing it with other communities of similar size and complexity, does that enter into how you might choose to approach an issue? If it's, for example, something is more prevalent here than elsewhere, do you choose to focus on that because of that? Or does that not really enter into your decision making?
I think it does to an extent, but mostly my main goal when I look at this is what is the issues that are affecting the community right now? What is it that I always got to make sure the community is safe. So what are these issues that if they're sometimes these may be prevalent issues, but are there a safety component to it for the community? If not, we have to focus on the community safety issue, like when you talk about domestic assaults, sex assaults, any of those type of things. When you talk about liquor versus drugs, yes, we may not have, we may be able to focus more because now we have more of an outcry from the public saying that this is starting to affect our personal lives, our businesses, and we don't like seeing it so openly done. And I mean, you can go back and there's talks about people drinking and throwing footballs in the middle of the intersection and stuff like that, and that really perturbs a lot of people. And then there's also a component of safety. Like when these people are that intoxicated, what ends up happening if if they run out in front of a vehicle and they get hit?
Just so council knows, I've got a speakers list. Next is Councillor Forster, then Niche, and then Skelton Morban. Councillor Forster. Yes, he's done.
Thank you so much for bringing this. Couple of quick questions. We're going to get this from now on every month.
I'll try to get it to you every month. Like you see,
It doesn't have to be on.
Yeah, no, I when I'm really busy, I had April's kind of almost completed at the end of April, but then May came in and I had to finish it, and then so I kind of put them together at one time.
That's completely fair.
Yeah.
A couple of things. So maybe I'll go with, I'm on page 3 and I'm looking at the child pornography, child exploitation.
Yep.
And I see half of the cases that we've had this year were in the month of May.
Yeah.
That's incredibly troubling. Is there a reason why there was such a sharp uptick? I know it's an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just coincidence that there was that many in 1 month, or is there something we need to be aware of as a community?
So we don't, how do I put it? We don't just stumble across it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't just walk in and go, oh, there's child pornography. That would be almost impossible. We do is we have called an ICE unit. It's Integrated Child Exploitation Unit. It's down in our headquarters in Vancouver. What happens is they monitor all the stuff that's going on. They're basically a big computer sort of area that monitors what's going on, who's downloading what when it comes to child pornography. When they find it out, they find the hits. They call them the smaller ones, and I say that please take it with a grain of salt. Like they're dealing with very large, like
international challenges.
And so for us, they'll say, oh, hey, we've got 3 hits in Prince Rupert. They send up the information, and the members start the investigation from there.
Okay. So a while ago, I had raised some concerns about trafficking in our community. There's a lot of information being put out in the Lower Mainland, especially with FIFA coming. Is there anything we as a community might want to turn our heads to? We are a port town, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Is that something that at some point you could give us some advice on?
Human trafficking.
Human trafficking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think someone reached out to me. Was it Richard? Yeah. Richard had reached out about some pamphlets and some different things. And I'll be honest with you, it's generally we have a specialized section. We wouldn't have it here in Prince Rupert. It would come out of our federal sections from down in the Lower Mainland that deal with human trafficking. I can say I sit on a number of different panels that deal with the larger agency things that occur for the ports, and that has been brought up. And to be honest with you, the chances of us actually probably being involved in something like that would be pretty slim, just because they're very, very large and very complex investigations. Yeah. So yes, I definitely can try. There was an agency out of British Columbia that had some literature on it, and I could see if I could try to. I know I mentioned it to Richard, and Richard I suggested where you can find it and such.
Perfect.
And then we can always go that route. Yes, it's always going to be an issue. I don't disagree with you.
Thank you. And then some of my questions might be more just offline, so maybe looking into some of the things. My dad used to be an RCMP officer, and so some of them might be more technical like that. But I am looking at the time spent in the hospital for apprehension. So I just want to make sure I've got this right. That is time spent at the hospital specifically for mental health apprehensions, not medical distress while in cells. So how many hours are being spent if somebody's in cells and they have, I don't know, a heart attack or chest pain or something? how much time is being spent supporting things like that?
We don't have a format to collect that data. This data is collected because there's a form the members have to fill out when we do a mental health act. The Audrey mentioned that's very, we have to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's when we deal with this stuff. In it, so the moment the computer clocks them, the moment they stop at the hospital with the apprehension to the moment they leave. And then I get that time that comes off that form. That's why it's so precise when you see hours and minutes.
Hours and minutes.
But as it goes for medical emergencies, we don't get those. There's no way to really, I would have to really dig deep on how we could think of a way to track that. I know that we've been trying to do different ways, but there's no specific way at this point where we can say this is a scoring thing that we can track.
Okay. Thanks. I am quite concerned. I'm just going back to that child pornography one. That's incredibly disturbing.
It should be. I agree with you. It's not a stat that I would be very proud of myself.
No.
I'd love to see it lowered.
Maybe we'll go on because I think I'm still stuck on that.
All right. Councillor Nish.
Thanks for the report. I can agree with you on being in other towns and seeing the problem with drugs. And I spend a lot of time in Kelowna and Prince George and even in Vancouver and see the issues on the streets of such visible drug use. And I do understand that it is mostly alcohol here, but if you go back decades, it was more of a hidden problem because people were forced to go do it somewhere else, whether that's the bush or the behind a building or somewhere. And ever since COVID, it seems to be that I don't know if it's this entitlement that we can just do whatever we want wherever we want. And it's probably one of the things that gets raised the most by people to me is Five Corners, right? And I can appreciate that you are spending more time on that, but I guess I'm asking, are you going to continue doing that? Because it's still every day that you drive past there and there's 10 or 15 or 20 people in multiple areas. So, are you going to continue the enforcement, daily or?
Sorry, absolutely, yeah. So in fact, like I said, it's been brought up. We've had meetings, and it's a topic that's very concerning for the community. So yes, I've had my members focus on it, and they've been doing an incredible job. I will caveat that you also have to remember too that like sometimes it may be in a shift you get 2 or 3 domestic assaults, and you have X amount of members that are working. You're tied up for a while. You're not getting down there. Trust me, I've gone home for lunch and I've driven by Five Corners, and I'm like, oh, goodness, again. And I get it. It just seems like I've watched the members come in and they clear out the liquor, and you can drive by 15 minutes later and somehow they've purchased more and now they're back there again, or somebody's had it from somewhere else and what have you. I do know that I've stepped up the enforcement. One of the things we will be doing, and I will be implementing, much like I did, we're looking at overtime opportunities to get members to strictly focus on those 3 areas and try to do stepped up foot patrols and what have you in there to see if we can help mitigate that a bit. We're never gonna, we have to remember, we're dealing with a social issue, so it's criminal, but it's a social problem. It's a substance abuse problem. We're never going to eliminate it, but we need to control it is what we're trying to do the best we can and mitigate it.
Yeah, like I said, I think in the past it's always been there. It's just it's been more not visible to everyone, and I think people just get tired of driving past when you watch someone, eating food and throwing the garbage on the ground, and then drinking, quite openly. Where, I know when I was a young teenager, you didn't walk down the street with a beer because if you did, you got caught, you got taken away, or whereas now it just seems like we just do it, right? Like wherever, whenever, and whoever wants to do it. And so it's been a big frustration for a lot of people that talk to me. So I just hope that we can continue doing that, right?
No, for sure.
Councillor Skelton Morbin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you folks hear me on that end?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
There we go. Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you so much for the presentation, and welcome to Prince Rupert. I just have a few questions, I guess, around, we've heard a lot about statistics and different things like that. What kind of modalities are we looking at for proactive community policing and even accessing the CAPRA model and working with partnerships and things like that with folks in the community? I guess for yourself, being a new face on the block kind of thing, what does that look like, and how, and even just checking in on morality and not the morality, the morale the members that are at the detachment right now, because I know there was obviously a lot of overworking, a lot of stress and overtime and things like that, because I mean, they're short staffed across Canada. It's not just Prince Rupert, but obviously us being at the end of the road here, we've got a lot on our plate. And I myself, I was, just for context sake, I was in the APTP program in 2014. So I worked in general duty and coastal policing and things like that. So I have a little bit of a familiarity with some of the challenges and cultural pieces, and also working with the coastal First Nations and how critical and the important that is around, especially around community policing and youth and things like that. So I guess to kind of speak to that, I guess, again, just to roll back into the questions of what does that look like? And I guess since the time that you've been here, and then even looking forward, I think that I even highly recommend leaning on members that have been here for quite some time. Staff Sergeant Dave Uppel would be a prime example, and other members that have been able to kind of establish those relationships. But I guess for you, I have normally this would probably be in a different discussion, and I unfortunately haven't met you yet. So I just sorry to put you on the spot, but
That's
I wanted to just touch base and just kind of get to know that a little better.
Certainly. So what I can talk about, when you talk about the internal workings of the detachment, there's obviously certain things we can speak about, what we can't speak about.
Yeah.
But I will say that right now, morale is probably at its highest. I was just mentioning that come August, the last recruit should be here, and we should now be probably one of the few detachments, larger detachments in the north, that don't have what we call hard vacancies, which mean that the people that are off are only off because of they're off for sick reasons, or they're off for maternity or paternity, or they're graduating return to work because they came off an injury and are trying to get back. So right now, I would say that we are probably amongst the best, knock on wood, because it can change in a minute, but that is probably amongst the best. Just through conversations I've had with a lot of the different members, very happy. I was just mentioning that I've had a number of members approach me and say that they would actually consider extending another year, because it is a limited duration posting. So I'm pretty happy with that. Could we always improve? Absolutely, and we will. And so I can talk from that aspect. And when you talk about the other aspects outside the community, unfortunately, my first part here is it's the detachment required a lot of fixing, so to speak. A lot of operations needed to be changed. A lot of operations needed to be brought up to proper standards. So that was a big chunk of what I had to do when I first got here. Past that, now I've opened up and I've gotten out into the community more and more and more. I've been dealing with the schools and the principals. We've had a lot of different conversations there, a lot of different organizations. And I've been reaching out to our coastal communities, trying to get in to meet the leadership in each of those. I've managed to get out to one so far. And I would love to say that I can easily do it, but unfortunately, I think even my wife is getting mad at the 12-hour days and the 6 days a week. And she's saying that you got to take a little bit of time off.
Yeah, 100%. No, I appreciate that, and thank you. And sorry, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, I just wanted to also touch on, just a piece that I mentioned around relying on local NCOs that have the long experience here, especially in Prince Rupert. There's definitely a culture and ecosystem around here that's very unique, and we have such a mixed diversity of people from all over the world. And obviously, being a global port city, there's a lot of traffic that moves through here, good and bad. And as we touched on some of the drug pieces, even just recently, I can think back to a few months ago that there were recent, likely fentanyl-related overdoses and things like that. So there are traces of that kind of making its way through. And even some years ago, folks that I knew and went to school with and things like that, and just to have it unfortunately laced with other common, more legal uses like marijuana, and then all of a sudden, they're in critical condition and things like that. So there is the traffic that's moving through there. But yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, I've been there, done that, and then during my time in the APTP program, we had something called VOT, so volunteer overtime, where it was basically you weren't compensated for that, but for me, I put in a 20-hour shift without even realizing it, because it was one of the best jobs I ever had. And just really passionate about the work. So you can probably kind of see with just the questions I'm asking. But I think the big piece touching on, and just as you mentioned, with the time commitment, that's where I think the opportunity is relying on the NCOs and watch commanders and things like that to be able to touch base and kind of spread, divide and conquer, right? Like that I think can be, because even though we're a small LDP posting, it is a very busy detachment. There's a lot of things happening. And as you can see, and I imagine you hit the ground running in October, and thanks for being here, and thank you for coming to talk to us.
Thanks.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you so much. Just a couple of other things I thought of. For the mental health ones, at some point there was in a lot of communities, and I believe it was approved for Prince Rupert as well, to have a CAR 54 type model where you have a mental health trained nurse assigned. And I don't know that that ever got filled. Do you know if that's something that's still sort of being considered?
My understanding is it never got past the planning stages. I think the biggest challenge you're going to run into that is getting a psychiatric nurse for starters that will work. We're already seeing a shortage of those to begin with. And then what ends up happening is you got to put them in the police vehicle, and we don't have a dedicated member for doing just those type of calls. Like
Okay.
we only have the general duty. We only have a limited amount of members for the detachment. And I mean, those would be cost pieces we'd have to look at. But I mean, obviously, first of all, we need to have commitment from Northern Health to have a psychiatric nurse that's willing to do something like that.
Okay. Thank you. And my last one, I think people have touched on it in different ways. And maybe it's not even an answer for tonight. If you were sitting in our seat, what would you want us to be actioning for our community? You have a lot more knowledge about things like this than any of us might hope. So, you know, what would you want us to take away and try and do differently to support the community, to support you?
Well, I can say right now, I would have to see how this transpires over time. But as it sits up to date, it's been met very positively. Like I said, we approached with a business case for the victim services thing, and it got approved by the council and the mayor as well. And then every time I've approached with different opportunities and we've had discussions, it's always been met with positive results. So at this point, I haven't run into any what I'd call roadblocks. It's been very positive, right? So it's a lot of, I don't know. I can't really say anything negative at this point. I'm not saying that there couldn't be, I guess, but at this point, it's
not even so much negative. Like, what if you were to be guiding the ship back here like we are?
Yeah.
How would you want us to guide it? Keep going the way that we are, or is there anything different to support you that we might want to start turning our minds to?
What I would like to do is I'd like to continue the road I'm going on and show you the statistics. And if the statistics back up the stuff that's going on, then we can look at what other alternatives we might need. If it means we need another GIS member, if it means we need a community police officer, if it means we need that goes into the school, or if it means we need a coordinated or crime reduction unit of 2 people down there. These are the type of things. But like anything, it's like anything. With business, you have to come forward with the statistics. I can't just say, hey, this would be great, give me all this, and you're all going to laugh at me and say, no, we can't. And then so with this, I'm hoping to at least discover where our issues are and where we can best put the resources.
Yeah, great.
Mayor, thank you so much.
All good? Thank you, Sergeant.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time. And just on a personal level, you know, it's been very interactive. You came and met with us early. You know, what are some of your priorities? We talked to you about those key areas, 5 corners, whatever. And I have seen the impact of that activity and appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
All right. The next item on the agenda is another presentation from our very own Manager of Communications, Engagement, and Social Development. It is the 2025 annual report.
All right, I'm just going to make sure that I'm sharing the screen properly here. There we go. Can you see that, Councillor Skelton Morvan?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much.
Perfect. All right, so thank you for that introduction. Today I am just going to briefly go over our annual report for 2025, which includes some of the major accomplishments from 2025 and gives a little bit of a look ahead for what to expect for the community in 2026. I will try to keep it brief, but if you have any questions, you can definitely have those at the end of the presentation, and there is also quite a lot more detail in the actual report itself for both council and community. All right, so the report essentially starts with a bit of an overview of the community vision and strategic plan, some of the strategic priorities where we have left off with them for 2025 and 2026. Additional information that's in the report is also overviewed really briefly in this presentation, and then promotion of a later public comment opportunity at the annual public meeting, which will be held June 29th, assuming that you approve my report later in the agenda. So this is our community vision from the official community plan. It sees Prince Rupert as vibrant, resilient, sustainable, prosperous, active and vital, safe and beautiful, healthy and active, proud of its heritage, inclusive and equitable, proud of its community, nestled carefully in nature, and a place that people want to be. So all nice aspirations for a local government to have, and we're working on it. So generally speaking, the strategic plan priorities from our 2023 to 2026 council term were fiscal health, appropriate laws and services, replacing and renewing infrastructure, supporting housing, good governance, community renewal, and fostering economic, social, cultural, and environmental well-being. As we know, there's an election coming up in the fall, and we anticipate having a new strategic plan to follow that future council term. Because of that, the way that the annual report was structured this year, I actually included a bit of backwards looking, so looking at the strategic plan as a whole from when council started. So some of these you'll see that are actually from before 2025, just to give council a bit more of a kind of closeout to this past strategic plan. So a couple of the major fiscal improvements that we've been able to make is obviously signing the 5-year RBA funding agreement, which is a major push for council to have with the province. That's a great source of revenue for us. And also a recent agreement to settle the PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, with the Port of Prince Rupert. More information on that will follow tomorrow. We still have development of Watson Island and Lot 44 ongoing, advocating for a subsidy to the ferry to the airport and renewable energy projects. All right. The second strategy piece was appropriate laws and services. So some of the things that we've done, especially in 2025, was we've reviewed the incentives that were provided for development in the downtown, and council has decided to extend those to 2029. So that waives building permit fees and things like that. We've updated our solid waste management bylaw, we've updated our fire protection bylaw, and we've also increased our bylaw capacity with the addition of a peace officer in the 2025 budget. In progress, we're still working on our bylaw enforcement policy that we anticipate being completed soon. And then there's a number of different ongoing priorities that are occurring with respect to laws and services. One of the major things that we got off the docket in terms of renewing infrastructure was the completion of the RCMP building. So that was a great thing to see in 2025. It was mostly complete in 2024, but they didn't technically get occupancy until early 2025. We have ongoing the big infrastructure gap replacement project with water and sewer replacement in residential areas, relocation of public works and operations. That move is underway as we speak. Water treatment is something that council is still strongly advocating for additional funding for. Renewal of the fire hall, that's an additional thing that we're working on with the port, but it's a longer term piece. And then sanitary and sewer treatment is something that we're have underway, but it's definitely a major investment, so taking some time. In terms of community renewal, in 2024, we completed a parks plan. We completed the implementation of some parking strategy, and as well as a complete communities plan. Ongoing, we still have the waterfront development, so community members may have seen a survey on that go out, and we anticipate having some construction start next year. Odd Ides Vic Park renewal, we are still looking at achieving all of the necessary funds to get that project completed. And then some other renewal pieces are still ongoing. Right, so in terms of good governance, in 2025, we completed a comprehensive review of our city policies. Obviously, that's something that we do on an ongoing basis, but there was a number of them that we pulled out of dusty shelves to look at, and we finished that in 2025. There was also a joint cultural safety training program that we completed with the regional district and Port Ed, and it was now something that we can deploy to our staff internally here. And I think We also developed a city strategy to advocate for healthcare services. So I know that there's been a number of staff and council members actively involved in recruiting some of the doctors here locally. And then there's still some ongoing priorities, but there's quite a lot to be happy that we completed there. In terms of housing, there was a number of our bylaws and policies that we had to update, as well as the housing needs assessment as part of provincial directions on housing. And so all of that was completed, with some of it happening in 2025. That included a whole update of our official community plan, which I encourage the community to check out. It looks much nicer than the previous version. We had some good graphic designers lay it out. So it's my communications person talking, says it looks nice. And we're still continuing to pursue housing funding and partnerships and projects when appropriate, using municipally owned land. And so many of the projects you see moving forward have been actually on municipal land. It's up to, I think, almost 200 units that are either complete or in progress on city-held land. So that's great to see. So just an overview of specific things that were related to the provincial regulatory changes. So that was the housing needs assessment, our official community plan, alignment of our regulation with respect to short-term rentals, and then updating our regulations around density and some of the zoning bylaws. So that's all stuff that planning has had to take on in the last few years. And we've made all of the deadlines, which is commendable. In terms of economic, social, and environmental well-being, in 2025, we completed the Climate Action Plan, and again, the healthcare services is kind of on both of these priorities. I think I've repeated it there, sorry. And we've still got in progress the activities of our Indigenous Relations Committee and the Draft Reconciliation Action Plan, and food strategy development, and then implementation of our childcare action plan. So that's kind of an overview of the major strategic priorities that council had, but there's also updates on some of the key projects that the community might be interested in that's in the annual report, as well as statistics from various departments, some photo highlights of 2025, reporting on community enhancement grants and tax exemptions, as well as our fully adopted financial statements that are legally required to be part of that report. And something to note, just because we do really want to make sure that we continue to receive resource benefits agreement funding, some of the funded projects that we saw in 2025 and 2026 have been the 2nd Avenue Bridge project, which is starting this week, relocation of public works, covering a portion of the costs of big project sewer works, a portion of the wetland wastewater treatment project at Park Avenue, elimination of our outfalls, landfill leachate treatment, replacement of the filtration systems at the pool, resurfacing of Mariners Park Playground, and activities of the Indigenous Relations Committee. That's just a few things that have been funded by our resource benefits agreement, so we figured it was a good opportunity to highlight that and how important that funding really is for our community. And that's concluding the majority of my presentation. We also just encourage the community to come out to our annual public meeting that we're hoping to have Monday, June 29th at 7 p.m. before the regular meeting, to be confirmed following my report to council.
Great.
Thank you.
Questions? Comments? Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I saw 2nd Avenue Bridge RBA funded, right? And when we issue the tender bid, right, we were told it will finish in 3 weeks, but I see on the Facebook today, city's notification, it will take 2 months. So are we doing some extra work there, or what's make it from 3 weeks to 2 months now?
That would be a good question for the Director of Operations.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. We'll have to get back to you. I know there's been some changes in the traffic control plan and the actual workings on the bridge, but I don't have those with me right now.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much. The last time I was in this seat 20 plus years ago, we did not have a communications person on staff, and the difference is incredibly noticeable. Thank you very much for the work you do. Yeah. All right, this is the time where any member of the public who wants to speak to anything that's on the agenda is welcome to come forward to the microphone and do so at this time. And without seeing a great rush forward to the microphone, I'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda includes a number of items: the minutes of the regular, the special meeting to close on May the 25th, the minutes of the regular meeting of May 25th. Report for receipt include the report from planning, the development activity report, the report from the chief financial officer with regards to the financial variance report for April, report from the fire chief with the monthly fire rescue report for May 2026. There is correspondence for action, request for proclamation of June 15th as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. There is also correspondence for receipt, email from McDonald's Restaurant with regards to, it's an appreciation letter for McHappy Day. North Coast Regional District Meeting May Board highlights a letter from the Corporation of the District of Central Saanich with requesting dedicated provincial funding to support municipalities that actually achieve provincially mandated housing targets, and a memo from the UBCM president with regard to Heritage Conservation Act. The recommendation that all items on the consent agenda be approved or received as requested. Motion, please. Councillor Adey, Councillor Randhawa. Anything you want to speak to on that agenda? Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, it's correspondence for action. So do we need to pull that out to make a separate motion? Or because it's
if it's left as is, we will be proclaiming
Elder Abuse Day for today?
As requested.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
On the development activity report, I noticed there's two, one's a zoning bylaw and the other's just proposed development of a grocery store. And one's a year and a half, 20 months old, and the other is 14 months old. Is there any reason why they're so old and being held up? Or one's waiting for provincial, but the other one, 101st Avenue.
Go ahead. If you
Thank you
can
for the
enlighten
question.
us.
Yes, regarding the zoning bylaw, we are waiting on the applicant. They are right now reaching some of the conditions that we imposed on them before approval. That would be needing to be met before we can get them back to council for final approval. And regarding the grocery store, that one, as you mentioned, as was mentioned by council, we need approval from the ministries before we can move ahead with the application.
Okay, so pending
Yeah,
ministry
it's-
approval. Councillor Cunningham.
That's correct.
So who works on that approval from the ministry? Is the proponent or the city?
Through the mayor, that would be the applicant. The applicant is dealing with the ministry by themselves. Their team is working on them. We are in constant communication with them. Once they have a resolution, they'll get back to us and we'll be able to conclude that application.
Perfect. Any other questions? Thank you very much. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We next have reports, and if anybody online has been looking at the agenda, they know it's a fairly long one because there's a lot of reports and a lot of information there. So we'll begin with the Chief Financial Officer report, the audited financial statements corrected. Recommendation is council accepts the corrected 2025 audited financial statements as presented. Motion, please. Councillors Forrester and Randhawa. Any discussion, comments, or questions? I'm going to turn to the CFO only for the sake of public is listening and have you make a quick comment on why this was necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The auditors conducted a post review of the financial statements that were provided and accepted by council. They had made a recommendation for the 2024 statements to be restated to recognize Legacy's change from accounting for small private enterprises to public sector accounting. So upon consolidation, they had recommended that there should be a restatement to the 2024 amounts. The issue was caught afterwards that you can't actually add something that you had given to a subsidiary back twice. So they realized their error, and so we are having to correct it back to what was reported and accepted in 2024. So it simply is just the 2024 figures now agree to what the 2024 figures were last year. So this is the correction. There's no change to 2025's financial statements, aside from the fact that the carry forward numbers in certain schedules would be updated.
And just to repeat and for clarity, this is us complying with the auditor's recommendations.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have a report from the Chief Financial Officer with regards to the 2025 Statement of Financial Information. Recommendation that Council approves the Statement of Financial Information as presented. Motion, please. Councillor Adey, Councillor Forster, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have a report from the Manager, Communications, Engagement, and Social Development, consideration of the 2025 annual report for public circulation. Recommendation is the Council approve the circulation of the 2025 annual report and that Council set the date of June 29th for the public meeting on the annual report. Councillor Niche, Councillor Forster, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Report from the Chief Financial Officer, Chief Administrative Officer, Regulation Compliance Report. Recommendation that Council receives the report for information purposes. Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Niche, any Councillor Adey.
I remember asking for something of this kind to be done because of the recent penalties that in some people's minds might reflect a differing view of what the community is capable of in its current environment. So I'm glad to see this, but I see it as very much as a starting point. I think the reason to do this was to create an information base from which to undertake some advocacy. So I look at the three recommendations that are in the report. I very much agree with them. I would note that the section that kind of goes over the history of how these regulations have changed and how that's impacted us, I think it would be helpful to include dates. I'm a history teacher, so I need to jump on that just because I think that gives us a sense of the pace at which some of these changes have happened and why they've been so difficult to deal with. So I do have a question, although I'm in agreement with three recommendations. I think that some of the challenges that have been thrown at us may derive from federal changes and others may derive from provincial changes. And I'm assuming that when we take on efforts to resolve some of these things with the two levels of government, that they can be subdivided in a way that makes that efficient and more effective. So I'm very interested in next steps. I know that at the UBCM we have 15 minutes of life under the spotlight, and this discussion doesn't lend itself to that time frame. So I'm assuming that the advocacy that we would undertake would be staff to staff and perhaps trying to carve out some longer meetings.
Yeah, and I think another piece of this might be at UBCM or maybe prior to UBCM is having some dialogues with UBCM because if we're encountering this, I suspect we're not alone, and there may be a multi-front possible, right? But Councillor Cunningham.
Maybe part of that advocacy could be instead of these fines going to the various levels of government, they're put aside so we can use them to fix the problems, because it's a double whammy. They're fining us and then expecting us to fix the problem when they're taking the money away from us.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if there's a venue for advocacy at the federal level, but I think it's something we should look at and advocate for the fact that these fines should be going towards fixing the problem rather than fining us.
Right. Well said. Councillor Forster.
Thanks. We've discussed in the past the liquid waste, and most of our fines have actually gone to that. If you look through that, I'd say at least 75% of the fines are related to that. Not every single community does liquid waste.
Right.
And I've asked it before, what are we gaining? And I don't see in this report that I'm seeing anything that we're gaining by continuing to take that on as a community. I know that there's organizations and businesses in our community that would really want us to, but if it's costing taxpayers, I'm not seeing in this report what the benefit to continuing even is. So I'm wondering if that's something we could maybe ask to have a report on, because I hear paying the fine is well and good. Are we getting any benefit?
Right.
Like at the end of the day, it doesn't look like we are.
Right. So let's deal with it this way, because I think a clean motion on this would be easy, and then let's bring a second motion, sort of flowing from. Okay. Any further questions or comments on this? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to request staff provide a report on the liquid waste that outlines the specific benefits to the community of Prince Rupert as a taxpayer base,
Yep.
not just the businesses.
Yep.
Comparing how much it's cost us to do this, including fines, versus what we have gained by doing this, and compare it to communities of our size, and see how many communities of our size in the north have the liquid wastewater, and what are they being fined?
Deputy Miller, you got that? Any, so motion, seconder? Seconded Councillor Cunningham. Any further discussion? All in favor? Was that a question? Yes, Councillor Eady?
I understand the question. I agree with finding out more about it. I guess I'm hoping that within the context of finding more about it, what happens if we don't do it? There is still liquid waste.
Yep.
And surely that would also present issues that may be of concern to the community as well. So I would hope that whatever we come back with has that context as well.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have a report from planning with regards to the temporary use permit 2601 171 Mishaw Road. Recommendation is council proceed with statutory notification process for temporary use permit 2601 and include as a permit condition that the city retains a $5,000 cash bond until the temporary use is discontinued. Motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Nish and
excuse
Cunningham.
me.
Up.
Sorry, this this resolution is incorrect. It came, this particular TUP came before council on May 25th for statutory notification.
That's what I thought.
It would be before council for final approval at this point.
You know what? When I was reading through the agenda, I'm going, we did this already. Okay, so so this is for final approval. All right, so still Councillor Nish and Cunningham. Councillor Eady.
Just curious as to whether there's any public comment.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have not received any comments regarding this file.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Cunningham.
The $5,000 bond, cash bond, what is that actually there for?
Deputy Miller.
I will defer to our planner to answer that.
Thank you for the question. That is standard practice, just to incentivize people to do all the things that they're required to do, comply with the temporary use permit, and return the property to the current standard.
Councillor Cunningham.
So, being involved in salvage with the Coast Guard and that, and the mess deconstruction of a vessel makes, if they contaminate that land, $5,000 would be one load of a dump truck. You know, this is their private land, right?
Go ahead.
Yes, that is correct. That is private land.
So if they contaminate that land, they're responsible for cleaning it up after this temporary use permit. Are we gonna be overseeing that?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. As part of the temporary use permit, they are they need to return the property to their current standard. So any contamination that may happen needs to be resolved for this permit to be concluded.
So is there gonna be a base study what the land is now before they start wrecking boats?
Go ahead.
A base study is not part of the temporary use permit. That is not something that pertains to this. What I can mention is that there is additional layers of federal and provincial requirements that they need to comply, and those may also have testing as well as other studies attached to them that go beyond the municipal standards.
So I'm just wondering, how will you return it to its original standards if you have no base study to begin with?
Go ahead.
Thank you for pointing that out. That goes beyond what I know and what is part of the report. But if you wish, we could revisit this as part of the recommendations.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Oh, question.
So sorry, because this is now final reading.
This is it.
And so what Councillor Cunningham has raised is that we don't know how they would return it to the base environmental.
Correct.
Correct. So if we pass this, there is no need for a base study to be done, or is that something separate that could be requested?
So I'm going to go to Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The temporary use permit before council is for the municipal rules for that with respect to any environmental issues that would be provincial and federal, and they would the proponent or the applicant would be required to follow all of the laws and legislation around that. That would be a completely separate. This is strictly for the municipal approval. That does not mean that they have federal and provincial exemption from any rules.
Yeah. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We move on. Number F, report from the Chief Financial Officer with regards to election procedures bylaw. Number 3561. Recommendation is that council proceed with consideration of repealing election voting procedure and automated vote counting system authorization bylaw number 3496, 2022, and that council proceed with consideration of the election procedures bylaw number 3561, 2026. Can I have a motion, please? Councilors Randawa and Ady, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have a report from the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer with regards to the cemetery bylaw number 3562. Recommendation is council considers adoption of the City of Prince Rupert Cemetery bylaw number 3562, 2026, which repeals and replaces cemetery bylaw number 3237, 207, and any amendments thereto. Motion, please. Councillor Sadie, Councillor Anish, any discussion? All in favor? Nope. Councillor Cunningham.
Why are we taking one section of the cemetery and having different rules for it than the rest of the cemetery?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the section that we're referring to is section GG at this point. The reason that was brought in was when that section was created by the council of the day, if you will, that section was specifically created for people to have an opportunity to have flat headstones. So no ornaments, no raised headstones. It was simply another option for people. I appreciate that there's been some discussion about that section, and while it's certainly something to consider, it is council's bylaw. Should you wish to amend that, you certainly can. I would also note that in that particular section, there are 21 plots that have been pre-sold, where people have been made aware that that is for flat headstones only. So it would need to be taken into consideration if we were looking to amend that. That was something, again, that was brought in when the section was created.
Councillor Cunningham.
I was down there again today in the cemetery. And that section, just about, I've got pictures. Even the low ones are 2 to 3, 4 inches high. They have fences around them. Every rule that we're saying is okay for the rest of the cemetery is also in GG. So I would like to make an amendment to this that GG is the same as the rest of the cemetery. That there's no one section that has to abide by a different rule than the rest of the cemetery. I went around and measured a lot of monuments, memorials today, and they're anywhere from 3.5 inches up to 5 feet. And in other sections, there's castles. And so I find it, and in this report, there's 2 or 3 sections that says flush. And it's kind of confusing because you've got it for GG, but it also says for basically the rest of the cemetery. So there's language in here that I think has to be looked at and straightened out. Even though we're straightening it out, it's still somewhat confusing. I don't know if the rest of councils found it that way. You could ask them, but I would just, I'd like, there's a few things that have to be straightened out on this, so maybe defer it to another meeting and have a discussion. I don't know, but
Okay, Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Cunningham is correct. It does say throughout the bylaw that we recommend, we encourage strongly, we bylaw flush headstones. That is generally permitted standard option within the province. Most cemetery bylaws contain that. The difference is that in other areas you can look to amend that with there's some discretionary process over that. The intention for this particular section was that not be the case. Now, appreciating that someone could go up after and put a little fence around it or do whatever, it is very difficult, obviously, to enforce that. When people do purchase plots in section GG, they are advised that it's flush mount. They sign several documents indicating that. However, we obviously aren't up there every day, every evening, 24 hours a day to monitor it. So we do know that those things happen. We're certainly not going to go and remove any of that from someone's grave. I will note that part of the reason why we do the flush mount headstones and we have it throughout the bylaw is that our staff are not able to install the raised headstones or the ones that are not flush mount. We just don't have the equipment to be able to do that. We would not want to be in a situation where we would inadvertently break a headstone or do something in that respect. If someone does want that kind of headstone in a different area, we have them fill out a memorial marker form so that we can note that, so that if there's something that happens with the headstone for safety or what have you, we know that we can call someone with respect to that.
Okay.
the existing headstones or memorials that are there now are going to be grandfathered in?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you. That is correct. The bylaw will take effect from the date council passes fourth and final reading forward. We will not go back to someone's grave site and remove any headstones. We just won't do that.
See, what's happening right now is because of age and that, and I'm more aware of it as some people in this room, that we have a lot of grand chiefs and matriarchs that are now passing, and they want to put something there to signify their status in the Indigenous community and that. And I noticed a lot of GG is Indigenous people, and some of the headstones there are pieces of art. And that, so this is why I'm very reluctant to pass this the way it is right now. I think it's something we have to look at and maybe at least amend. And also, if somebody wants to put a memorial in and break the rules, then they can go and ask for an amendment, or what do you want to call it, with the engineer. If he says no, in this bylaw, there's no process for an appeal. And, and time's a factor in some of these situations. And I think that we should have a appeal process in there as well, because it could be a hot potato. It's one of those things that, I don't see why we're specifically taking one section of a very large cemetery and making rules for just it and not other places. And you just said you can't watch it 24 hours. So if somebody sneaks in there after the fact and puts something up they shouldn't, you're not going to take it down. So what's the use of, not opening it up so you can at least discuss this before people sneak in there at night, as some have, and put some pretty significant monuments up.
Just on a procedural basis, before we even think about an amendment, I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion here and see where others are at, and then maybe we can craft something. Any other comments or questions from council? Councillor Adey.
On a lighter note, but with a question attached to it, the chart that was included in the report that compares the previous bylaw and the proposed changes and the impact of those, I found that to be extremely useful. I wish that that would happen with every complex bylaw amendment, because it really made it easier for me to digest the material. It did, having said that, provoke a question. On the chart, it mentions indigent provisions. Previously, it contained a discretionary fee waiver, and the suggestion is to remove that. And it notes that this may require a separate policy if needed. I guess I'd look for a little more clarity on what that all means and why would it provoke a policy consideration.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intention behind that is just to remove things from the bylaw that could very likely be dealt with at a staff level that would just save time in order to prevent having people to come to council. Only council can waive their bylaw. Staff have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to a policy.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. Under the temporary removal section, it talks about if a stone or a marker needs to be moved temporarily while another plot is being dealt with or addressed, and it gets broken, the city will pay for the repairs unless the person put that marker or that headstone there without permission. I assume that means that is also going to be grandfathered. Anything that's there right now is going to be considered to be approved.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that really is with respect to people placing cemetery headstones and markers that we're not aware of in any way, shape, or form. So if someone is being interred and our crew go to place to prepare the ground for their interment, and we see that there's a headstone there that we have no knowledge of, that would be an exception to this bylaw. We would have no way. We're not going to comb the grounds to see if there's a headstone in there that we don't know about. This is with specific regard to changing someone's headstone that's there now.
What I don't, and maybe I missed it, this is quite an in-depth bylaw.
Yep.
So let's say I go and do it anyway.
Yep.
What's the consequence?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had instances where people have gone to the cemetery and placed markers that were against the provisions of the bylaw. In that case, we would do whatever we could to be sensitive and work with the family on that so that we do have those in place in the file. Again, it's really for safety reasons as well, to ensure that if something happens, if you have a very large headstone that falls over, or if something is damaged, that we can ensure the security of the cemetery.
Councillor Forster.
Sorry. I have lots of thoughts on this one,
Okay.
so I'm so sorry. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Cunningham has said. I do think there needs to be an appeal process for sure. Because the way that I read this is in somebody's most vulnerable time, somebody could say no and that they don't feel like they have anywhere to go. So I do think there needs to be some way for them to appeal a decision that's made that might feel unfair. I do have a question with the 21 pre-sold plots. So let's say we were to pass an amendment to make, doesn't matter where your plot is, everybody's the same. Would we be able to say to those people that they have the option of getting their money back and we could resell it? Like, how would we, I know that's an operations type decision, but where somebody is buried is very, very personal. And so I'm curious how we would approach that, if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm going to go to Deputy Miller, but I tell you what's more concern to me than the 21 is the people that already laid somebody to rest because that suited them. That's my concern. Is you've created it, call it a neighborhood. You said here's the rules in this neighborhood. Oh, I'd like to be in that neighborhood. I'll put myself in that neighborhood. And then you change the rules of the neighborhood. And so the 21 pre-sold, I think we could deal with. It's the others that are actually where there's people lying there and people may have made a choice to be there for a particular reason. They may not have. I have no connection to any one of those people at all. But to the 21, let's get Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I anticipated this question and confirmed with our lovely staff in Development Services that, in fact, all 21 plots that have been pre-sold, everyone has had the conversation that this is a flush headstone location. They have all initialed and signed documents so that they are aware of that. Fully appreciate that when someone passes, it's an emotional time when you're dealing with those matters. But of the 21, all 21 are fully aware and have signed. And of note, there are only 5 remaining plots in that particular section of the cemetery.
I'm going to go to Councillor Randawa and come back to you if you want. Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Reddy already brought up about the old bylaw contain discretionary fee waiver. The new one removed, right?
Yeah.
And our deputy CA said because staff can do that one, right? So my question is, in case staff can't do that, right, and the people don't feel comfortable, they should have some kind of appeal process after that with council. If staff can fix everything, I have no problem. But they should be after that, in case they don't feel comfortable, they should have some kind of appeal process there.
Okay. So I heard several times now for some sort of appeal process. Okay, Councillor Forster, I suspect you weren't done, but no pressure.
So I'm just thinking, I hear what you're saying. Somebody might have been buried somewhere with an expectation of what their neighborhood might look like. 100%. That doesn't mean things can't evolve or change. And so I think I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant for us to continue with the way that things are, where if you get a plot in this area, you can't do anything else. But I also hear that's how some people chose. Now, I also wonder, because I know of one example in that section where in the family's grief, they did not realize they could not put a headstone up for their family member. And I wonder how many people also in their grief do not realize what they are agreeing to. They're signing documents that they're probably not reading. They just want to be done. And that's just my concern, is that somebody signing something while their family member has just died. They're not thinking straight. And that's just my concern, because I know of an example where that's exactly what happened. A family signed it without realizing that they could not put a headstone up for their loved one.
Yeah, and certainly with the emotional stress level around this, two truths can be absolutely true at the same time. Staff could have been crystal clear in explaining, okay, this is what it is. This is what it, you could go here, 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 and here. You can put whatever you want. If you go over here, you can only do this. Sign, sign, sign. And not being able to take that in. I agree with your comment 100%. Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to be clear, staff are more than happy to make amendments to the bylaw to ensure that council is more comfortable with it. Currently, we were looking for first, second, and third reading. You can always repeal and replace a third reading. However, if it provides an additional level of comfort for council, we can certainly do first and second reading this evening, which would give staff marching orders, if you will, to proceed with pursuing the bylaw. And then we can certainly look at incorporating some language that would provide a higher level of comfort for council.
Yeah, no, for sure. Councillor Niche.
I guess my question is in regards to this one area would be, what would be the downfall to making it equal to the other areas? What is the sticking point that makes that area be its own, I guess?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you. At this point, I would see, so anyone who has actively selected that area because of that reason, that may be an issue with their family, as well as for the 21 people. I mean, I can't say that they purchased the plot because of that, but I also can't say that they didn't purchase the plot because of that. So that does have some potential for risk there. But
I want to make sure I understood the number that you said just a moment ago, and I will go to you next, Councillor Skelton Morgan. There's the 21 pre-sold. Are you saying in that entire area there's only then 5 more plots available? So we're really discussing something that the horse is out of the barn on this one, quite frankly. All right. Councillor Skelton Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add to some of the notions. I think there's a way to go about this so that maybe not using the language of an appeal process, because that almost implies that there is a kind of a stonewalling of bureaucracy or some form of rejection and creating an adversarial kind of language, rather than having maybe a discretionary category, might be the language we want to use when they file and fill out forms, and then having those kind of options available. Honestly, with the way the kind of the dynamics of the cemetery is out there, and then all of the significant pieces and art that have been put up and things like that, and I really don't see it as something that we could ever be on the winning side of, and then this has been a conversation in the past with council and other challenges around amendments regarding the cemetery. Just for us to basically, and then I think, Councillor Forrester touched on the notions of just it being already a sensitive time for us to crank out the rule book rather than our hearts and minds. I think it doesn't necessarily resonate with the court of public opinion or the needs and kind of wants of the community. So I think there's a way to go about this, maybe with a friendly amendment down the road, as Deputy Miller had described. But yeah, I just wanted to touch in on those pieces, and I think just what the rest of the council thinks around the language piece. So it's not necessarily we're being stonewalled at the front and now you have to appeal, versus having a discretionary category for these cultural pieces and things like that I think are very important to literally over half of our community and population.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, going back to Gigi, if anyone has been in that section of the cemetery, the majority of the headstones there are all higher than flush. So if somebody goes in there and says, well, you told me I have to put in a flush one, but on either side, they're up in the air. You know, like it's, you know, I would find it rather after the emotional ride you're on and that, and you go back, well, how come I had to do it flush when all these ones around me aren't? You know, and the other thing is with the may require separate policy if needed. Well, you know, we're passing a bylaw for it, and then we're saying we might need a separate policy. And you know, how are we going to decide on that separate policy? You know, that's another factor that we've got to look at down the road. So, like Councillor Reed Skelton Morvan says, it's a no-win situation. But we've got to sort of go down the middle of the road here, and I just think having one section where you've got a rule that everyone's breaking anyway.
So my understanding, there is a slight difference, and Deputy Miller, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you can add to this, but there is an ability within the notion of flush mount to go to what's called a pillow, or what, you know, you can go up 4 or 5 inches. Our staff can handle that. Our staff can put those in. It's within a range that's acceptable. Deputy Miller, help me out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am eyeballing our Director of Operations, yes,
Ah!
to ensure that I'm about to say something that it really has to do with our staff's ability to place the headstone safely and efficiently and effectively. And if we don't have the equipment to be able to do it, it's an added cost, certainly, to, I mean, we could break it, the staff could break it. It would be terrible for that to happen. So certainly flush mount, it's just a nicer way of saying a flat headstone. Whether that's an inch or two above the ground or flat to the ground, it's significantly different than a tower to place. If I could speak to the policy piece, that's really in reference to if there's a financial barrier that's preventing someone from burying their loved one, or what that looks like, having a policy where these people could have some quiet conversation with staff, and perhaps at the discretion even of the CIO. It's far more, it's a very sensitive time, and so not having to have that person come to council to do that would be much nicer.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. All right, council, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking we do at least first and second reading of the bylaw so that time keeps marching and the process keeps marching. With all the room in the world for amendments, you're not locking yourself in. We could do first, second, third, and then repeal it. They're both the same thing. They're the same animal, right? And so whichever you do, I think some instruction to staff would be helpful. Some clarity, maybe from council, would be helpful on both the issue of whether we want GG to be unique or whether we just want it rolled in. And my thinking, honestly, at this point in time, is if we're really talking about 5 plots left, it won't matter much which way we go. So I'm happy with whatever the outcome is as we move forward on that. But I think some clarity for the sake of staff would be really, really helpful. And then some clarity around coming back to us with at least exploring what an appeal process, whether that's the will of council to have that explored or not. And so what I think might be helpful is if we attacked it this way. We do first, second reading, knowing that full well that at third reading you can make all the adjustments you want. So that at least gets moving along. And then we have, we build some sort of resolution that gives staff instruction on what those amendments might look like. Councillor Randall, what? No, okay, just your whole, okay. Does that work for you, Deputy Miller? Okay, so now we're not looking at the bylaw right now. We're just talking about the report. Okay, so we could actually pass the recommendation that's in front of us and then move to the bylaw and have that argument at the bylaw. Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report is simply that council consider
Yeah.
the bylaw. I would be very happy to have the resolution passed to consider the bylaw and then the amendment for the resolution to come during the bylaws.
Yeah. So for the sake of moving on in tonight's meeting, let's pass this resolution and then we will consider the bylaw and deal with it more directly. All right. Councillor Eady, were you?
I was making a motion, but I think we've already made one.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Any
Yes, sir.
opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Looks like we're going to have a good discussion at the bylaw. All right. We have we have a report from the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer with regards to the Good Neighbor Bylaw number 3558, summary of revisions following staff review. Recommendation that council receive the report for information outlining substantive changes made to the Good Neighbor Bylaw since March 2025 draft, reflecting an extensive staff review and refinement process. Can I have a motion, please, to that effect? Councillor Eady and Councillor Niche, any discussion? Councillor Niche.
Should we do this discussion during the bylaw portion?
Well, no, it does warm the earth for the next.
I guess the only thing that really kind of stuck out for me was, what is considered a recreational vehicle? Because in the report, it's showing that there's only allowed one recreational vehicle on a property, but I couldn't find an explanation of what a recreational vehicle is. So if someone had a travel trailer and a boat, is this they're not allowed to have these now, and that's going to become an issue? I mean, I know there's many people in our community that have more than one recreational vehicle. Now, is a boat a recreational vehicle? That's what I don't know, because it's not telling me.
Yep. Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was actually staff's intention to include a definition of a recreational vehicle in the bylaw, and thank you for pointing out that it was not in there. So happy to add that.
Okay, good catch. Any other comments? Councillor Cunningham.
So around the community, you have lots with 3 boats on it, trailer. Where are they going to put this stuff? We're passing a bylaw that says you've got to move it, and there's no place to move it. I've said before, that nice big warehouse out on Ridley or on Watson, we could be storing a lot of stuff in there, and the city could be making some money with it and give, if we're going to pass something like this, there's no alternative for people to put their stuff. That's another problem, and it's been a problem in this town for a while, storage of recreational vehicles, boats, everything.
Deputy Miller, given that there's not a definition of RV in the bylaw, what was the intention?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intention was that you would have one recreational vehicle stored on your property. If you had multiple, you could certainly have an enclosure for those vehicles on your property, but not unenclosed, open 13 vessels and a ATV.
So, but when we define the recreational vehicle, would that be boats, ATVs, all the toys?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Forster.
Thanks. I think a year and a half or so ago, I had raised a question about chickens. And when I look at this in 6.5C, it says no birds. So if I had a parrot, under this, I would no longer be able to have a parrot. If I had 1 chicken or 2 chickens, I can not have chickens. that how I'm interpreting this?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, the intention is not that you couldn't have a parrot as a pet, but there was significant conversation, I believe, many years ago, pre-Deputy Miller time, with respect to backyard chickens, and that would be the intention of this bylaw. There may be some language on the books that never came back to council with respect to consideration of that, and that certainly we could look at that as a future bylaw.
Councillor Forster.
So, and maybe it's I'm getting into the weeds.
Okay.
But it says if their cries unduly disturb the peace. So if I had a quiet chicken, no, I'm thinking how somebody is going to try and navigate this. Because it only says if they're disruptive. So it doesn't say, like we've had the discussion here about the goats. If the goats are quiet, everybody can have a goat.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with respect to disruptive, it's not simply noise. We have enforced on residents in the past who have had chickens, and the disruption comes from the chickens getting out into the neighborhood, animals attacking said chickens, children crying because their chickens have been eaten by the dog next door. There are many stories of what this looks like. They also attract rodents, which is a significant nuisance. Yeah.
Councillor Forster, sorry.
And where are we on goats? Just like I know we've passed that one for one place
the
as
temporary
a
use
trial.
permit. Yeah.
So if I went and got a goat, and it was a quiet goat, and my spouse agreed, am I outside of this? Because, like, I think
You're looking for clarity.
I want clarity because if I can already see some wiggle room,
yeah,
I think somebody else will, and I don't want us to get into a back and forth with somebody on social media or in the grocery store about what they can and cannot have.
Yeah.
And so I see chickens, goats, and a parrot is the other one for a bird that I also see, but I'm sure there's many others. There's in Terrace, I know there's a family that raised pigeons and doves that create a nuisance to all their neighbors, but they're quiet, but they poop on everybody's yard when they let them out for their nightly flight.
Yeah.
Like, how nitty gritty do we need to get? I don't know. I'm asking for clarity.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city of Prince Rupert does have a livestock prohibition bylaw, which is where the goats would fall into.
Yes, absolutely.
Would it be wrong to reference that in here? Like, we've got the specific prohibitions where we're talking about this. Like, what would it look like to say in that 6.5C, an asterisk for livestock, please see
bylaw, whatever. Deputy Miller.
Thank you. We could certainly look at doing something like that. I would always caution when you have one bylaw referencing another bylaw, you can get into this amazing vortex when one is repealed and then you miss repealing it from another bylaw, or you're repealing one bylaw which turns into 7 bylaws. So we do have specific wording in the livestock for chickens and goats, etc. But I mean, we can look at adding some clarification to this bylaw that doesn't specifically reference the bylaw number, that may be of assistance.
That other bylaws may need to be checked.
Correct.
Sort of thing.
Correct.
Councillor Cunningham.
A couple of things. Basically, what we're saying in this bylaw, and I have no problem with it. I take my hearing aids out and I don't hear anything. But we're basically saying that now from 7 in the morning to 9 at night is the noise times. Is that somewhat how you would interpret it? Because that's how some people are going to interpret it. And now it's basically it's for construction. It's good hours for construction, but people are gonna say, well, I can make noise from 7 in the morning to 9 at night now, so I can see some sort of infringement on what some people consider noise and what some people don't. One first question.
Deputy
Depends on their taste of music, in my opinion.
Thank you for that. There really are construction hours. People do have the right to peaceful enjoyment of their property, irrespective of the time of day. So if you are blasting whatever particular kind of music you think you might like to enjoy, and your neighbor has to sit there for 15 hours and listen to it, you will probably get a visit from a bylaw officer with respect to that. Generally, it's with respect to construction. I can tell you that we have not had a significant number of noise infractions during the day. People are generally pretty respectful of that.
Councillor Cunningham.
In other parts of here, there's snow removal and ice removal and things like that. And we're talking about the sidewalk in front of a residential house. Now, if you have a senior that's incapable of clearing their sidewalk, or a handicapped person that's incapable of doing their sidewalk, is there some process where they would be exempt? Not necessarily because they can't do it or they can't afford it. You know, I can see this from a senior point of view.
Deputy.
But I do clear my sidewalk, but you know, it's one of those things that I can see a bit of a pushback on that way.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intention of the bylaw is not to be overly prohibitive. Certainly, we want people to clean the fronts of their properties, their sidewalks, whether that be of grass or snow or ice. And we would encourage residents to help their neighbors. If you see, it's not our intention to find a senior citizen or someone who has accessibility issues who perhaps can't clean their sidewalk, and then we're just going to keep finding them. That would not be the case. We would certainly work with them to help mitigate whatever risk is in front of their property as best we could. But to add provisions in the bylaw for that, we would have to track people who is in the property. If you sell your house, do you still fall under that exemption piece, or what that may look like?
Councillor Niche.
Back to the recreational vehicles. I struggle with this quite a bit because I just feel that we're, a northern community where people are living here because they want to enjoy the outdoors, and they, tend to have more than one recreational vehicle if they have them. And, if you're going to try and tell people that they have to put them in it says to be stored indoors or under a shelter. So what we're going to end up with is all these people buying these god awful, ugly looking Canadian Tire temporary shelters that will end up strewn all over the streets in windstorms. So I don't think I don't think that that's going to solve a problem. And I really think that needs to be looked and more taken into consideration as far as unsightly. Like if someone's got a travel trailer that's 30 years old that hasn't moved, the tires are rotting off it and it's sitting there, versus someone who's got a brand new one that they're using it, and a boat, similar scenarios. Like I struggle with one vehicle because I think that affects a big part of our community, and I don't think by putting a bunch of temporary shelters all over people's front yards it's going to make anything look any better. I think it in fact will make it look a lot worse. So I would definitely like to see some changes on that.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Not through. Okay, the other one I'm having a bit of a problem with in here is vacant or abandoned houses. We have them all over town already, and we struggle with them. And, giving people 6 months or a year when they've had X number of years already, and just in my neighborhood alone, I can count 5 of them. And, they're 5 ugly houses. They're not just not looking good. They're falling apart, grads caved in, house burnt out, things like that. And they've been there for years. And I just don't know, Deputy C.A.O. Miller and I have gone around the block a couple times. Like, there's a house 2 away from me starting to lean on the house beside it, and the back porch is 1 2x4 is holding it up. Things like this. And, I know there's legal problems and people have died and no will, or people are fighting and contesting over it and things like that. But I think we have to have more teeth than 1 year. Because, somebody can say, okay, I'm going to come and get a permit and I'm going to putter around on it. And nothing really changes. And giving them 1 year, even if they're going to pay the $540 or whatever it is, to my way of thinking, everyone's got the Taj Mahal till somebody else looks at it. But I just think that's another part of this that has to be looked at.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have gone around a little bit about unkept houses. It is very difficult in the eyes of the law to take down someone's property. The risks to the municipality are significant if we don't do it properly. So the timelines within the bylaw is to ensure that we are legally on side. We do have about 7 that are slated to come down this summer. But that has been a very lengthy process. We have gone so far as to search people out on Facebook to provide the courts with sufficient information that we have done everything we possibly can to let them know. The courts do not look kindly on the municipality taking down a house just because we might think it's needing to come down. It's a pretty high bar to hit. I would agree. The time is difficult, but it's unfortunately what we're required to do.
Yeah. And I think you say that I'm fair, Councillor, in categorizing it. I mean, it's not like the two of you disagree. Deputy Miller also agrees that house needs to come down and is telling you what the law is in terms of getting it down. And yeah. So it's not like our staff are out there protecting people. It's in Canada, private property rights mean a lot, and it's not easily or casually overcome that you get to enter onto somebody's property and remove it for very good reason. Councillor Adie, I'll come back to you. I promise.
Thank you. I would suggest that we're at a very similar place with this one as we were with the previous one. Clearly, there's some pieces here that people want to take away and think about a little more. So I would like to suggest on behalf of anyone who's watching on television as well as ourselves that we do a similar thing, and first and second readings, providing an opportunity next time around for amendments, and that we do some due diligence and put some thought into what those might be so that we can bring those back. So that would mean that we would be passing the report as it stands and making that change when we get to the bylaw.
Yeah. Councillor Cunningham.
I know how diligent our staff has been. Trust me, I think our staff has bent over backwards for a lot of people in this community and that. And, I'm not slighting for 1 minute our staff. I've watched Deputy Miller go through hell and back again on some of these files. So trust me, when I'm not belittling our staff in any way. They've gone the extra mile many times to try and solve these problems, but they still exist. There was an article on Facebook, the electronic Bible, that a house on 8th behind Henry's BY that and the person saying that they could tear it down for 20,000, but the city wouldn't let them because the city wanted to do it for 100,000. It's totally wrong, and we can't defend ourselves on it, but it's just ridiculous. I wanted to, the city does not tear things down.
Right.
Contractors do.
Right. Okay. Any other comments on the bylaw? Or it's not the bylaw, the report? So for the sake of moving on, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. These are really substantial and important discussions. if in any way, shape, or form I sound like I'm laughing at it, I'm laughing at the fact that we work really hard to get it right. All right. Report from the Director of Operations with regards to RFT 70017 11th Avenue East Water Main Replacement Recommendation that Council award RFT 70017 for the 11th Avenue East Water Main Replacement to Infracon construction in the amount of $14,270,891, excluding GST. Can I have a motion, please, to that effect? Councillor Niche, Cunningham, is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We'll move on to those bylaws. Number 8A, Election Procedures Bylaw number 3561, recommendation that the council repeal elections voting procedure and automated vote counting systems authorization bylaw 3496/2022, and that council introduce and give first, second, and third readings to election procedures bylaw number 3561/2026. Councillors Cunningham and Randawa, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have bylaw number 8B, cemetery bylaw number 3562. Recommendation that the council repeal City of Prince Rupert Cemetery bylaw number 3237/2007. The council introduce and give first, second. Okay, I'm going to read third readings to the City of Prince Rupert Cemetery bylaw number 3562/2026. But based on our previous discussion, I'm going to just take an executive decision here and suggest that read first and second reading to the City of Prince Rupert bylaw number 3562/2026. Can I have a motion, please, to that effect? Councillors Cunningham and Niche, voting on that bylaw, understanding that we'll have some clarifying language to follow. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. All right. Let's test the waters, council. Let's have a motion to have staff bring that, I think it's GG, into compliance with the rest of the site, the cemetery. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Cunningham, is there a second, or Councillor Forrester? So I think all of council's clear on this, but this would eliminate the uniqueness under the bylaw of that area of the cemetery. All in favor of that? Any opposed to that? It is carried. Okay. And then I would have a motion to have staff prepare a report on what an amendment might look like that would include an appeal process in the headstone. Somebody find better language, but sorry, size and type of headstone. Motion to that effect, Councillor Forrester, Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion on that? Deputy Miller, is that clear for you? All in favor?
I think a special note when it comes.
Is that Councillor Skelton Morvan?
Yes.
Okay, go
ahead. No, this was just more of a lighthearted comment. It's just regarding the equipment required to move the headstone. It's usually the strongest aunties and uncles that move the headstone. So the city doesn't need to purchase equipment.
All right, thank you, Councillor. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there was also Deputy CAO Miller mentioned about perhaps making some sort of way for people to apply if they couldn't afford things. Did I miss that?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in the bylaw currently, they would be required to come to council. We're looking to remove that so they can simply work with staff.
Yeah. So no change necessary.
no change necessary. That will still come out of the bylaw and just be a policy that staff will take care of.
Okay. Councillor Randhawa.
Yes, like that. Like in that case, like if the old one is contain discretionary fee waiver, right? So in case in the new one removed, only staff can handle that.
Yes.
So in case staff don't approve their fee waiver, and then they don't have any option to go to council, I think they should have
An appeal process on that as
process
well.
on that too.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intention wasn't that the person wouldn't have an opportunity to still be heard under that particular appeal process. It would just be that they didn't have to initially come to council. They could work with staff initially on that.
So the appeal is there if they want to. Okay. Is that okay?
As long as they have option, like they can come up to that. Yeah.
Okay. Do I need to vote on something? I've lost my way in the process.
No.
We voted on it?
Yes, you are good on that.
So we don't need any more?
No.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'll move on to the next bylaw. Great. Thank you very much. The
Mr.
good
Mayor.
neighbor bylaw. Again, I'm going to...
I would like to recommend, so given that this bylaw has already gone to first and second and is now at third,
Yeah.
perhaps council could defer
Yeah.
third reading of this bylaw until the June 29th
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, and let's have in that motion this particulars then of what we're looking. So a motion to defer, a report back on what is specifics of an RV and some options. I think around numbers. You're hearing some concern at the council, broader concern at the council table about what that looks like. And help me out, council. What else? We talked about more than that.
Reference with respect to livestock.
Oh, yes. Yes, reference with respect to livestock. Yeah. All right. So can I have a motion to that effect? Councilors Randhawa and Nish. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Ticket information, does this kind of get tied into the other?
Yes and no, Mr. Mayor. So these two bylaws simply add at third reading these bylaws. They won't pass fourth and final until all of the readings of the previous bylaws are in place. This just sets them up in order to be able to do that. What's contained in those bylaws is irrelevant to these.
Okay. Ticket information amendment bylaw number 3559. Council give third reading to the City of Prince Rupert ticket information amendment bylaw number 3559. Motion, please. Councilors Nish and Cunningham. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Ticket information amendment bylaw number 3560 2025. Recommendation that council give third reading to the City of Prince Rupert ticket information amendment bylaw number 3560 2025. Councilor Randhawa and 80. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Council Roundtable, your turn. Councilor Cunningham.
A couple things, like first, we all know how successful Seafest was and weather cooperated with us. Some of us were in the precarious position of being judges for the parade. None of us got tomatoes thrown at us, so I guess we did a half decent job. But what I'd like to know is, when are we going to be painting our crosswalks? More so than anything, because we've got a lot of tourists in town right now, and they don't even know where the crosswalks are because they're so faded. That, and again, during Seafest, there was enough porta potties around it, but there's a lot of other events where they're not there, and I think it's something we should be looking at. I don't know if the organizers of these events should be the ones on the hook for it, or if we should, but it's something that I think we should be taking a look at. I don't know how we do it, but it's just, I've noticed on different events around town and that people are running behind a tree or things like that, and it's, one of the good neighbor bylaws is gonna put you in a fine situation for running behind that tree.
What's your name? Director Schmidt. Painting lines.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. Currently, our line painting tender is closed and awarded. Generally, we prefer to do it after paving is concluded, just to get the best bang for our buck. But we could move that ahead if so chosen.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and while we're on contracts, how about paving, the new paving contract for this year?
Yeah, go ahead, Director.
The paving contract is now posted on BC Bid. It's a 2-week posting. It was posted on Friday.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Echoing Councillor Cunningham's, so grateful to the different people in our community that volunteer CFest, all
Yep.
kinds of events. It's a lot of work, and our community is better for the volunteers we have. And along those lines, we did have some volunteers in our community mow the courthouse lawn when the province chose not to.
Yep.
If people have questions about who is responsible for mowing a particular public space, what is the best way for them to ask that question? I don't mean people's yards.
Right.
That's covered by the Good Neighbor bylaw. You have
Right.
a concern, you send in a complaint.
Right.
But what happens if it's provincial property, like the courthouse again, or if it's a park? How would somebody flag that as a concern? And who's
What might be categorized broadly as public lands?
Yeah, so a school park.
Yep.
The Mariners Park.
Yep.
Seal Cove, the nice park there that the
Salt
port, the salt marsh that the port paid for, but is it now the port's responsibility or is it ours?
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our, without rattling all the phone numbers off, that information is certainly on our website. People can contact the phone numbers on our website. They are also more than, we're happy to get emails at the City Hall email address, which is just cityhall@princerupert.ca or bylaw@princerupert.ca, and we can certainly reach out and confirm property ownership and pass any information along.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you. And I also just wanted to give a shout out to all the graduates of
Mm-hmm.
high school, university. We've got lots of people from our community that are winning a lot of awards across so many different categories. And so appreciative that many of those people might go away for school. But when they come back, they're bringing expertise and they're really showing off our community in an incredibly positive light. So just wanted to extend my gratitude and congratulations to all of those graduates.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the duties of mayor at this time of year is to attend a lot of grad stuff. So I've already been to the Charles Hayes grad and the Haida grad, and I know that the PCS grad is coming up, and there's a few other events. And it's invigorating to be there and be part of it and see, the energy amongst the graduates, but also the incredible pride of family. I said it at one event the other night. I said, is there anything more exciting as a parent than watching your child succeed? Right? Like, I mean, you just, yay, right? They're taking the right steps. They're doing the right things. So absolutely, I've said this many, many times in many, many different situations. If children are well supported at home, there is no better place to get an education for a child than in Prince Rupert. Our K-12 school system is incredible. From the school board through to the custodial staff and the educators and everybody that surrounds them, the parent volunteers, they create an ecosystem where children are really encouraged to succeed. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Councillor Adey.
As a retired teacher and current substitute, I'll share the pride in the accomplishments of the grads. I know from many years what a big deal it is on any number of the levels we've already talked about. So congratulations to them. I also want to shout out the success of the CFest weekend, and in particular extend a commendation to the mayor for ensuring the weather was good. I do have some.
It's really hard to get it nice but not too sunny, right? You know, you don't want sunburn.
Well, you hit it just right this weekend. I do have some questions though. The Second Avenue Bridge, Councillor Randawa asked one of the questions I already had around the change in the proposed length of the closure. So I'm looking forward to what we can find out about that. In the notice, it also suggests that part of what we're doing is looking at alternative routes given the age, on a permanent basis, given the age of the bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about whether there's an opportunity to mix two things. The alternative route, which people will be put in a position of having to use for anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months. I'm wondering whether there is a mechanism by which that could be considered as one of the ways to manage an alternative, a more permanent solution for an alternative route. I understand that would involve property owners and CN, and there's complexity involved there, but it would be, I think, helpful to have a look at what that might look like as an option. And my second question is more practical in the short term. As people are spending the next 3 weeks to 2 months traversing the gravel road to get from Section 2 to town, are we going to put a little extra effort into making sure that the quality of that road is maintained so that the cars don't have to suffer any unnecessary damage?
Director Schmidt.
Thank you for the question. So first part of that question, the rerouting study there, we're looking at all alternatives. I will say you kind of nailed it there with the complexities of using that route. There's a lot of different ownership in there. There's CN, Port Properties, and PRPA as well. So it's a challenging reroute just in this instance, but we are looking at all the options in that kind of Section 2 area. For the second question, we've actually just started regrading that road, putting some material down so that when we first open it, it's in good shape, and we'll be keeping on top of maintenance throughout the reroute.
Just jumping off on that, I never want to miss an opportunity to brace people for the reality of what still lies in front of us. You know, we've done a tremendous job, and I say we, I mean we the community, not we the council. I think we the council have done a good job. I'm very proud of the work we do, but the previous councils have worked hard to take on this massive infrastructure burden that we inherited, and you know, it started with the replacement of the water dam, and now we're doing the water pipes and the RCMP station, and now we got to get to water treatment. And it'd be really easy to say, wow, you know, that was a lot of work, but we're done. And we're not done. The reality that's still in front of us is aging infrastructure all around us. We know that we're going to have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in sewage treatment in some way, shape, or form. It's unavoidable. It's a reality that faces us. We know that we have two really old, large bridges. Not a lot of communities have these kinds of bridges. And if you talk to engineers, these are actually architectural structures. They're impressive structures, and yet they're at end of life. And you know, the estimate varies, but 5, 7, 10 years is what we might expect out of Second Avenue Bridge and Sixth Avenue Bridge, and replacing them with like structures, you know, out of sight in terms of cost. So we're going to be looking at alternatives there. We have a fire hall that we know that in the event of an earthquake, we might not be able to get the apparatus out, which is not the best place or situation to be in, right? And so we know that needs replacement. And these things are massive. And while we tackle them, our really nice assets like a library and a swimming pool and an ice rink and performing arts center are getting older and aging, and as we tackle the list, will become increasingly higher on the must-do list. So I don't say that, we could have a long discussion of all the opportunities that are in front of Prince Rupert, and they're huge and they're massive, and I'm excited about the future. I just don't want us to believe that once we have fixed this, holy water pipe that sits in front of the council, that the community thinks, oh good, we're done. There is a lot of heavy lifting to be done in the years that come, and I just think we constantly need to keep that reality. We have to stay focused. Councils have to stay focused on that work, or it'll get away from us again. Anything else, Council? Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some people like ask questions like we have already some housing unit completed, right? And so if we can get like numbers like how many completed and how many like previous council or this council approved can be built. So if we can those numbers like how many units can be done.
Yeah, I think it's really worthwhile, and I happily acknowledge there's incredible crossover between councils. I happened to have the pleasure of representing you at the Lac Oulam's housing opening on 11th, and I made it very clear that it was a previous council that did the heavy lifting to get the land available and all that sort of stuff. And here we are in the 4th year of our mandate finally opening it, right? And that's just the nature of the business that we're in. These things take a long time to get from A to B. But you're absolutely right. Some sort of accounting of how, actual how many units to date, how many still to come, and we know that those, while helpful, that's nowhere near enough yet, right? No matter what. Yeah. Anything else? I'd accept a motion to adjourn. Councillor Adey, Councillor Forrester, any discussion? No? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Funny how the words come out sometimes by habit. The meeting is